The sea remembers things people forget. Sailors say that on certain nights, when the fog sits low and the water lies too still, you can hear a slow, deliberate creak of wood where no ship sails. And if you listen closely, beneath the groan of unseen timbers, there's a faint sound, like a fuse burning. They say that's when Blackbeard is near, long after the cannons fell silent and the great pirate was said to have died. Stories began to spread among those who lived by the ocean. Not the usual tavern tales of treasure and glory, but quieter things, stranger things. Fishermen off the Carolina coast whispered of a shadow beneath their boats that moved against the current. Nets would come up heavy, not with fish, but with charred rope and splintered wood, as if dragged from some ancient wreck that should not still exist. And sometimes, just sometimes, they saw him, not clearly, never clearly, a shape at the helm of a ship that seemed stitched together from darkness itself. Its sails hung like torn wings, unmoved by wind. Lanterns glowed faintly along its sides, but their light was wrong, flickering green and gold like something alive. And at the center stood a man broader than any living sailor, his silhouette crowned with a beard that writhed as though it had a life of its own. Blackbeard. The legend says he made a bargain before his final battle. Not with a king, not with gold, with the sea itself. Edward Teach Blackbeard had always understood something other men didn't. The ocean was not just water. It was a watcher, a keeper of secrets, a collector of souls. On the night before his last fight, when the horizon burned red with the promise of blood, Blackbeard stood alone on the deck of his ship. The crew slept uneasily below, sensing something they couldn't name. He lit the slow-burning fuses in his beard, his infamous trick to strike fear into enemies. But this time, there was no audience, no battle yet to fight. He stood there as smoke curled around his face and whispered into the dark, "Let me never be forgotten." The sea answered, not in words but in a sudden stillness. The waves flattened, the wind died, even the stars seemed to dim, as if something vast had turned its attention toward him. And then came the voice, not heard with ears, but felt, deep, cold, and endless. "What will you give?" Blackbeard did not hesitate. Everything. The next day he fought like a man who could not die. They say he took wounds that would have killed 10 men over, that he laughed as blades struck him, that even as he fell, surrounded and outnumbered, his eyes burned with something unnatural. And when at last his body hit the deck, the sea rose. A wave, sudden and towering, crashed over the ship, too large, too violent for the calm day it had been. When it receded, something was missing. Not just the man. Something more. Years passed, then decades, but the sightings never stopped. Ships reported being followed by something just beyond the fog. Compasses spinning wildly. Fires refusing to stay lit. Crewmen waking in the night, swearing they heard boots pacing above them, on decks where no one stood. One captain, bold or foolish enough to pursue the phantom, claimed he saw the ship up close. He described its hull as blackened, as though it had burned and burned again. Cannon ports gaped like empty eyes, and at the helm stood Blackbeard, unchanged, untouched by time. But it was his face that haunted the captain, because it wasn't rage or triumph he saw there. It was hunger. According to the oldest version of the tale, the sea kept its side of the bargain. Blackbeard was not forgotten, but neither was he free. Bound to the waters he had ruled, he sails endlessly through the hidden paths beneath storms and fog, gathering what the sea desires: stories, fear, and sometimes souls. The burning fuses still smolder in his beard, though no hand relights them. And those who see his ship too clearly, who stare too long into that unnatural glow, are said to vanish without a trace. No wreckage, no bodies, only a faint smell of smoke drifting over the waves. So sailors learn certain habits. They do not chase lights on the horizon that don't flicker right. They do not answer voices calling from the fog. And when the sea goes unnaturally still, they do one thing above all else. They leave, because the ocean remembers its bargains. And somewhere in its endless depths, a pirate still sails, waiting for the next soul bold enough to be remembered alongside him.